The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Great to have you in on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you will get our starting five shout-outs coming up in the stream. You want to watch the show, you're welcome to it. Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Like and subscribe there, or just watch on Twitter, Hail Varsity Radio, at HVarsity Radio. Give Elijah a follow, at Herbal Essence. Chris Schmidt, that's me, at Schmidt_radio. And we'll talk a few fireworks on the recruiting trail. Tim Verghese with us from Rivals.com and Inside Nebraska in about 20 minutes. What a busy run it's been for Nebraska. Jeremiah Jones is in, tremendous athlete out of Kentucky. Is somebody Nebraska targeted for that hybrid safety spot, but can also be a dude that lines up on the offensive side of the ball. We'll get there with Tim, the Chase Lofton decision to Florida State. Where do things stand with two of the linebackers targeted, Christian Jones and Will Hawthorne? And more to go for Nebraska in 2025. In Hour 2, our Blackshirt Hour. Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, will join us on Monday with Charlie. And I just have a feeling, I'll just put it this way, Coach may have an arsenal of fireworks. Uncle Charlie's the guy that you'd want to take with you to the fireworks stand, I think. I know.
Well, Charlie strikes me as the kind of guy that made his own fireworks in his garage. Yeah, the type of guy that just gets some black powder in a cardboard tube.
Chuck's got a shop out back.
Yeah.
Not made in China, made in Blackshirtville. But, so Coach will be with us. We'll talk some ball with him. And then Jay Moore going to join us, co-host Big Red Wrap-Up, Blackshirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore. Talk some thoughts from him. Plenty to get into with Matt Rhule and his sit-down with Joel Klatt. We have a couple of excerpts to pull from that. We really like Joel. I love seeing him at Big Ten Media Days, and excited that Rhule got the sit-down and really a nice spotlight. You look at what Klatt's been doing with that big noon interview where he sat down with Sark, he sat down with DeBoer, and pretty cool for Rhule to get that showcase for about 30 minutes with Joel's segment. And, 30-minute infomercial there for the Big Red. And per usual, Coach Rhule just nails it in the interview setting, and he's done a nice job in year one, but that expectation of a big jump in year two. 489-1240, 489-1240 to get in. You can dial us up toll-free along the Hail Varsity Radio Network, 1-800-825-5865. Can email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com. We're in today, we're in tomorrow, so I need your firework fights as a youth. And one of our best of shows will feature our dear departed friend Mike Leach, the pirate, and his glorious Roman candle story from the days back in Cody, Wyoming. So you're going to want to tune in for that. Is that the 4th or the 5th it'll air?
I think maybe the 3rd even.
Oh, the 3rd. I'm
trying to decide.
Okay, well, Elijah will have Leach talking Roman candle warfare.
A peek behind the curtain here. I don't know yet. That is a problem for me in roughly 24 hours.
So Wednesday through Friday. But check it out on the Spotify, iTunes, Google Play platforms for podcast. If you're heading to the lake or going to some friends, or you're taking a little breather yourself, you've earned it. Do all that and be happy. Take us along. So, shout-outs. Justin is in first. Justin, thank you. Patrick in second. Good to have you, Patrick. Coach Brandon in third. It's Coach Brandon Kool-Aid. And hit that like button, he says. I shake my head, yes. Hit the like button, Coach Brandon. Appreciate you doing that. Jimmy is in. Mr. Snitley is in. Jeff Snitley from the Boulder Peace Treaty. Red Knight 79 says, good afternoon, all. The real Matthew is in. Fly too low, says GBR. Brent is here along with Tim. David says, afternoon, fellas. Weston is saying what's up, RSVPing from Blair. Sal, good to have you. Good to have you. Scott is here. Also, Robert is in. And good to have all of you in on the stream. 489-1240. Brian Snitley, the other part of that Boulder Peace Treaty, is in. Says Trev leaves partially due to instability at the university's president. Now the A&M prez is leaving in 2025. It's just a turn cycle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Administratively, folks are...
We've reached a new week.
Yeah.
I'm ready to move on from Trev. It was fun for a week, but he's hired the replacement coach, the hitting coach at A&M, who everyone seems to like. Good job, Trev. Back to Husker News.
No, I get it. But what Mr. Snitley's saying is you just can't find any
stability if you're Trev.
Stability if you're you want to go work for somebody. You hope they stick and stay, but it's not been the case. Are you loaded up for the weekend? Are you got your as far as camping and the festivities?
I was telling you this weekend.
I like your camping story.
The camping trip has been shortened. It was going to be a 3-night. Now it's down to a 1-night. We got people trying to back out. It's life in your mid-20s, I guess. People have life responsibilities.
Why are folks bailing out of the camping thing?
Oh, we got one guy studying for the MCAT. We got another guy who wants to go spend some 4th of July time with his family. I get it. We'll see. I don't know.
That's overrated.
Spending time with family?
I love them all, but...
That's what I'm saying. He wants to... Oh, they all go to the Seward 4th of July parade every single year. He doesn't want to miss that. So we'll see. As long as I have at least one buddy to go with, I'll make it a camping trip. But as I was texting with you last night, everyone just as the weekend went on was like, I don't know anymore. And I'm like, well, why am I taking time off of work?
Tell them the parade will be there next year.
And the year after. Seward's the 4th of July capital of the world, pretty much.
It's cool. I mean, I remember going as a kid.
So I get it, but yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with that. Regardless, I'm going to be blowing up lots of things wherever I am. I'm going to be consuming probably too many beers wherever I am.
So alcohol and fireworks is Elijah's combo winner.
Yeah, don't try this at home, kids. Particularly the alcohol, because you're not of age. But yeah, that's kind of my plans, is just to hope I wake up on Friday morning with all 10 fingers.
It'd be hard to open that beer. Your hand's all wrapped up.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I'm not going to miss my favorite holiday. If I blow off a finger, I'm going to wrap that puppy up and finish the night. Like,
could make work a little difficult.
Well, I think I can. If it's one finger, I'm okay. As I look at the soundboard in front of me, if I lose one finger, if you got
an oven mitt on because Mr. Mortar Shell decided to go a little early,
I like tape
or you tipped it over.
I can like tape some pins to it or something, like writing utensil pin, and be able to push the board that way. I where there's a will, there's a way, Schmitty.
Well,
if I were to lose an entire hand, maybe that's when I'll get a little bit concerned. But I don't know. That would take a pretty significant accident, and I've made it 25 years without any significant accident, so I doubt there'll be one this year.
Let's hear from Matt Rhule with Joel Klatt. We'll have different excerpts from this from Joel and Coach Rhule's sit down today. And first part of the interview is really cool. We'll circle back to it about what he loves most about being the Nebraska head coach, and then specifically a quick impression, the early impression with the Nebraska fan base. But a word that was used by Joel Klatt and Matt Rhule didn't disagree with it, but it is the topic of desperation. And you can look at it a couple of different ways. When you hear desperation, I think of a buddy trying to find a date, all right? I mean, there's some friends you have that just settle on a gal that treats you like crap, and that's no good. That's too bad, despite buddies trying to talk him in or out of that rendezvous.
And some guys are into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some guys just like to be Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But desperate for success. And that's fair. I think the fan base is getting to a fever pitch of wanting a big win and then do it again. Let's see some consistency. Let's see some sustained success. And it's beyond just barely getting over the goal line, beyond a 6-6. But a 6-6 would still be pretty awesome, comparatively speaking. You just feel like you're built for better than that with some of the talent you've recruited, the way you practice. And here's Matt Rhule on that word desperation and his feeling for excitement with the season and where the program's headed.
I think the word desperate is not a bad word. I think that's exactly the right word, Joel, because people love their team.
Yeah.
It's like, being in Texas and being in a one-school town,
Yeah.
I mean, they love that team. And I think the thing is, for me, coming from the Northeast, coming from where all the places I've been, you get there and they've sold the crowd out for so long that maybe you take that for granted. And immediately I didn't want to take that for granted. Immediately I wanted to return a product that people wanted to come see and were proud to see. And you start talking to people all across the state and they're telling you these memories of coming to games with, their grandfather and their uncle. And, these people were working jobs or farming or ranching. And the only time they would make sure they could get off was to come watch those games. And you're like, man, there's an unbelievable importance to not just winning, but to doing things in a way that represents people in Nebraska. So if there's some optimism, I think it's that people, they kind of really relate to the way we've done things. They relate to the way that we've practiced. They've related to the way that, we played Minnesota last year. We lost again on a last-second play. And I remember a couple of our kids started running right off the field to the locker room. And I was like, no, that's not how we do things. And we went over and shook their hand. We played Colorado. And the Fox people came up to me, or the game people came up to me and said, hey, they're going to storm the field. And I said, no, we're going to go over and shake Coach Sanders' hand. Like, we want to return this program to prominence, but we also have to bring a dignity and respect.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people are excited about. And then we've recruited pretty well and got some good players now.
So a product you're proud of, a product you support, a product that gets it done, and that pride swells, right? Brent checks in bottle rocket fights with trash can lids as our shields. Brent, hearkening back, anonymous, checks in when it comes to firework stories. Who doesn't have great memories about fireworks in the 4th of July? Show us your hook hands. Anonymous, that's probably a sore spot, because there's going to be a news story out there of someone trying to throw an M80 out the old car window, be Mr. Comedian. And
going Jason Pierre-Paul.
Well, that was tough, but he made it work.
They did. That's what I'm saying here with the radio.
Surgically.
Like, where there's a will, there's a way.
But you want to make sure that window's rolled down.
Actually, don't go throw M80s out of a car window at all. I know a guy who got, I guess I don't know him personally. I have a friend of a friend that got.
But you know of.
Yeah, he got a terrorism charge.
Oh,
for
no.
Yeah, he went to a small town and did that. And the sheriff wanted to really throw the book at him. So he had a hard time getting a job for a couple years after that one. So definitely don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to get a job whenever you have terrorism on the rap sheet.
That's not picking up trash on the side of the road. That thing sticks. A little bit more from Rhule with Joel Klatt today. What Rhule's excited about for now and the future. Cut 4 with the Big Red.
When I looked at Nebraska, I saw the facilities.
Yeah.
I saw the fan base. I saw the financial situation. I saw a school that had no debt. One of the only Big Ten schools with no debt. And the age we're getting ready to move into, I thought, well, this place is uniquely positioned. I saw a history of excellence. My question was, can we recruit there?
Sure.
I had people telling me, like, hey, it's in the middle of the country. It's going to be hard to recruit. Hey, why don't you wait for a job in Texas or Florida or something like that? And I kind of fell in love with the place, but that was always my question. So getting there and seeing, how cool of a town Lincoln is, how big of a city Omaha is, how much the football's pretty good in that area. There's a lot of Division I players coming out of that area. And then saying that there's still a national pool, man, I still can wear this. I can still wear this to an airport in Florida, and I'm going to get a Go Big Red, I promise you. So we still have some pull. Now we have to play well, but we can get players to come to Nebraska. We can get players who want to come play in those facilities. And so that's why I'm excited, because we have a pretty good team. I'm a coach. I'm not going to say too much, but I think we have a pretty good team. I have like a kind of a quiet confidence when I walk around about where we're headed. Is it this year? I think it is. Is it the next year? Definitely. And so I'm really excited about that.
So that's Matt Rhule with Joel Klatt today. We'll hear more from Klatt and Rhule as the show progresses, but we always talk about that Nebraska brand, and it's had so many successful decades that whether the 16-year-old may or may not know, they know about Rhule just because he's probably been contacted. Nebraska does their due diligence, but the kid's family still knows about Nebraska. The job now is to get the kid to know about what Nebraska is doing on Saturdays. They've had some moments, don't kid yourself, in the 5-7 year, they were in exciting ball games, but it's time to flip it on its ear the good way.
And if this offseason showed you anything, it's that if Nebraska does get things rolling, Matt Rhule has enough of a pull in the media, A, with some of his connections there, and B, Nebraska's got enough of a fan base that Nebraska will get the national headlines if Nebraska is back. And I think 1 year of national headlines can be all it takes for some recruits out there to say, hey, I like what Nebraska's building. So,
and then you follow through with the proof on the field.
That's what I'm saying. Like if you have that success on the field in 2024, I think you'll get the national headlines because Nebraska fans have some draw people in the national media like Matt Rhule. And if you get the national headlines, recruits from across the country are going to say, well, what's going on at Nebraska? Mm-hmm. Well, look at that 5-star quarterback. He's balling out.
Yep, been hearing about it, and look what they're doing. Well, we'll check in. Nebraska working hard on the recruiting trail. Tim Verghese next on Hail Varsity.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel will try and run down Tim Verghese. I know he's been a little busy.
He's in the green room.
All the recruiting. He's in the green room. Speak of the man with rivals and inside Nebraska. Tim Verghese joins us. Tim, good to see you, man. Thanks for a few minutes. How you doing?
Not too bad. Busy as y'all said. Apologize for being late.
No, you're good.
Oh, it's a busy afternoon. We saw the news.
Find Tim on Twitter at Tim Verghese. And, well, let's just spin the wheel here and where to start. We'll start with Jeremiah Jones, super athletic ball player out of Kentucky, Nebraska's first Kentucky dude since Wandale. And kind of break this down. I know Nebraska had him in, Tim, for an official visit during the week not long ago, but this is a guy that's not a stranger to Nebraska as he's been on their radar. But are you surprised at the get at this point? Kind of lay out your thoughts on Nebraska's latest edition.
Yeah, Nebraska offered back in the fall, like what they saw from the sophomore film and then the junior film, a little more versatility there. I'm honestly extremely surprised that this recruitment has stayed as quiet as it has. Louisville and Nebraska are the only two Power 4 schools that with offers out. Florida State monitored, a couple other schools monitored, but never pulled the trigger on the offer. I to this day, I question why Kentucky didn't offer, why like local Mississippi State, Ole Miss, why they weren't intrigued. I have no idea why this recruitment didn't get bigger than this, because you watch the film and this is a player that's more talented than his ranking and more talented than the offers he has. It's hard not to see the potential with him. That being said, I do wonder a little bit, like when I first got to the beat and I was checking in on Jones because he was one of those guys on the offer list that Nebraska was one of the few schools actually in the mix. So I checked in there just to see kind of what was going on. And everyone I talked to in Kentucky and that had knowledge on the recruitment was like, well, everyone around him believes Louisville is going to ultimately keep him home. So that's why a lot of schools just haven't gotten involved. It didn't scare Nebraska off. Nebraska offered, like I said, back in the fall, continued to engage, was able to persuade him to come down for that official visit last weekend. And that OV went really, really well. And I think like basically coming out of his Louisville OV, he was like, they set the bar high. It was going to be tough to match them, tough to overcome them. Nebraska did it. You know, that's Nebraska was able to overcome the Cardinals, keep them home. I think it's a really impressive win just for the fact that you beat Louisville, you beat their NIL presence. You know, this was a guy they really wanted. So the fact that you were able to overcome Louisville here, I think is a big, big deal for Nebraska. And in terms of what they're getting, obviously, a very versatile athlete. We have him listed at 6'6". We've heard he's probably closer to 6'4", 6'5". Still a big plus-size defender, likely going to fit in on the defensive side of the ball. Really athletic, kind of fits that rover spot like could play a couple of different positions though in the back end of the defense. Really impressive get. I think you dive in on the film there, and there's a lot to really like.
Tim, do you think part of the reason why maybe his recruitment hasn't taken off is that size that he has at 6'5"? I know he's playing defensive back right now, maybe more of an athlete, but Nebraska has a spot at Rover where it feels like he slots in really, really well, which is halfway in between linebacker and defensive back. That's kind of what his body feels like. Do you think some other teams were scared off being unsure of where he fits in? Because he'd be a very, very large defensive back, but on the flip side, a kind of slight and undersized linebacker that would need a lot of development there.
I think there's certainly a chance of that. I do know there's some guys like, you watch Jones's film, he plays some quarterback, he plays some receiver, there's some running back film in there, there's some linebackers, like he's just all over the field, and some teams get scared off at times by a guy that doesn't specialize in 1-2 things, that plays so much, is just a raw athlete. There's a couple of schools that are like, it's just too much quote unquote development for them. But you get to know the player, you talk to the player, and understand kind of where he's coming from, and talking to some of the recruits that were in town with him and their impression of him. Like this is a kid that loves the game of football, that because he's specialized in so many things, when he does get the opportunity or does play so many different things, when he gets the opportunity to specialize in one specific position, he's going to pick it up really, really fast because he has a deep, deep understanding of the game. And when he's got the time and the energy invested into just one sole position and learning the ins and outs of one specific position, I think he's really going to flourish. But that's somewhere where, like, I think Nebraska's finding these like diamonds, and these are what those diamonds in the rough look like. These guys that are really good high school players, really good high school athletes that other schools, for whatever reason, just have not given an offer out to.
It's Tim Verghese with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, talking some recruiting. Follow him on Twitter at Tim Verghese. And Tim, the other pickup of the weekend for Nebraska, a kid named Houston from St. Louis High School in Honolulu. You really get the whole geographic picture. Tell me what you know, and pronunciation, Houston Kahaina Torres?
Yes, Kahaina Torres is that. You got it. You
Nice.
got it. Yeah, and this one, I think, me and Steve, our buddy Steve, who works with us over here inside Nebraska, kind of just recorded a podcast earlier today, kind of talking most underrated members of the group, and obviously he's just in the class, but I think Houston's the guy that I don't. Again, people see the 3-star by the name, and then they just maybe like, oh, okay, another depth alignment. This is not that. You watch the film. You think about the way Nebraska kind of talks about him, the way Nebraska talks to him about him. They see him as the center of the future. This is a guy that 6'3", 270, no bad weight on him at all. Like, this is a guy that's going to come in and has the frame to add 20, 30 more pounds and hold it just fine. Really good feet, really good hand placement, really good upper body strength and power, good balance, like just a natural in pass pro, mean in the run game. That's what you love to see from a guy like this. He mentioned he's like at this high school right now. He played right tackle last year. He's going to play left tackle this year. So he knows all 5 spots along the line, but he's best obviously in the interior at his size. I think for him, I think Nebraska sees him as a guy that can come in. He's going to early enroll, so Nebraska sees him as a guy that can come in and compete for that starting center job with Ben Scott off to the league after this 2024 season. I think they see him as a guy that can legitimately come in and compete for that center job and potentially even win it in his first semester on campus.
Pretty impressive for Nebraska, number 3 center listed, but you mentioned the tools he has to play at a high level at St. Louis High on the edges and then on the interior. And just speak a moment to the work that Coach Donnie is doing with that offensive line room, and three gets now on the offensive line for 2025. Tim, what do you think so far, and what's that number get to, do you believe?
It's going to be a smaller class, I think, on the O-line. You've got a couple additions in the room now. I think they're going to take some swings now down the stretch, try their best to flip Douglas Utu, try and get in that mix with David Sanders, maybe try at one of those bona fide stud offensive tackles. Sean Hammerbeck's still out there. They still see him kind of as a versatile athlete. So there's a couple names still out there they're still working on, but I expect this to be a smaller O-line class just with the depth they've built over the last year, what this 2026 class looks like, and kind of what their needs are this year. I think getting Houston was a big need. It was between Houston and then the Bishop Gorman center, S.J. Fetuli. So they really wanted to address that center spot, and they did it with Houston. And I think moving forward, Alei Kalani Uvalu is another one that's still out there from Bishop Gorman, but that's a guy that he's a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, so he's going to take a mission, so he's not technically going to be on campus until 2027, wherever he commits to. So that's one they're kind of looking at as a recruit for down the line, but still a guy that's technically in this class that they're working on. As far as Rhule, I mean, this has been a really impressive job, I think, from him. Like, I've said it a couple places at this point, but think about where the O-line was last year, just in terms of what they were able to practice with and where they were this year. They entrusted Dylan at times in practice to work behind that third-string O-line this year. There wasn't a third-string O-line to work with last year. Like, they didn't have that. Now they have a third-string O-line to work with bodies at all 5 spots that are capable. They're 3 deep at center. They're 3-4 deep at both guard spots. Like, they've got bodies now. They've built depth very quickly at that position. And you think back to this program, like, O-line depth at times has really been an issue. That's not an issue anymore. And you look at the way they're building this class with Houston, a guy that can come in and contribute pretty early along the interior. This last cycle, they brought in guys, Landon Davidson, Gibson Pyle. Some of those guys can also contribute pretty early on the interior. And then you're developing tackles. Brian Tapu, this is the guy that's going to probably sit and stash for a couple years. Then develop him in a year or two. He's potentially your starting offensive tackle, but there's no expectations on him. You can just slowly but surely develop him, let him learn from the program, let him learn from people above him, and really build this program up, from the trenches.
One of the things I think is interesting is just the recruiting strategy, where you're going Midwestern and Polynesian offensive linemen, which if you go back to 2000 or so, it tended to work pretty well for Nebraska. Tim Verghese with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Tim, before we get you out, we need to talk Chase Lofton. He's off to Florida State. I think at least in the media, Nebraska felt good about Chase Lofton 2 weeks ago. It felt like they made up some ground on Florida State, but in the end, Chase Lofton commits to the Seminoles. Your thoughts, your reaction to Chase Lofton leaving the state?
I'm more surprised at the fact that it was Florida State than Texas A&M than I am it was Florida State and not Nebraska, to be honest. Coming into June, I thought there was ground to be made up on Texas A&M, not Florida State. But then he went down to Florida State, and that OV went really, really well. He left. Mike Norvell, he's one of those guys. Mike Norvell and Dan Lanning are 2 head coaches right now. If they get involved in their recruitment, it's really hard to lose to those guys. Really hard to beat those guys. They find a guy that they personally want. They take that on headstrong. And Rhule's kind of put himself in that similar tier. But Norvell just kind of took this one over. They held him on campus. He started to see Tallahassee as a place he could see himself at. He wanted to explore something new. That started to get to be my read kind of as this recruitment turned national into the way it did. He kind of wanted to explore something new. I thought it was going to be in College Station. It's going to be in Tallahassee, but I don't think this one's necessarily done either. I think Texas A&M's going to continue to work. As we're speaking right now, Lincoln Kerr, the basically borderline 5-star tight end out of Kansas, committed to Kansas State. So Texas A&M missed out there too. So that means I would expect them to either circle back on Lofton or expand their tight end board. Nebraska, I think they're in a good spot from a tight end standpoint. Like, they don't necessarily need to go offer a new one now, even though this one's gone. Like, 26 is a loaded cycle at the position, but they're going to continue to try and flip here, try and keep Lofton home. But at the end of the day, I think both sides can kind of see, hey, go explore something new for yourself if you want. And on Lofton's end, hey, Nebraska's got pretty good tight end depth right now, and if something does open up down the line, we can make that, see what happens there.
Tim Verghese, Rivals Inside Nebraska. Tim, hang on. Elijah lied to you. 2 minutes on the other side. Hail Varsity continues, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with your recruiting segment continues. Tim Verghese with Rivals Inside Nebraska. Tim Verghese. Follow and find him on Twitter. Great work and write-up on Nebraska's newest get. Jeremiah Jones, athlete and a defensive back / could be offensive side of the ball. He's got a lot of spots on the field he can play, and Nebraska did a good job landing this talent. Tim, we just wrapped up on Chase Lofton's decision to go to Florida State. What a thought from two of the linebackers still on Nebraska's board that are trying to decide. Christian Jones, the all-world ball player out of West Side, and that program's just phenomenal. Also, you got Hawthorne from Iowa, and body-wise, just looking at his film, kind of reminds me of that meat and potatoes Big Ten linebacker. Comparatively speaking, Iowa State's 15 minutes from where he plays ball. That Big 12 v. Big 10 contrast with how you fit at that mid-level. So talk to me a little bit here about both linebackers, the extension perhaps of Jones and his recruitment, and then also Hawthorne.
Yeah, so on Jones's end, the latest I've been able to gather, he spent, I guess, 2 weekends ago now, the June 21st weekend he spent at Oklahoma, and going into that visit, talking to people on kind of both sides of it, it was more of just a feel-out visit for Oklahoma's end. At the time, they were like, we're not even sure if he's a take right now. But I had a feeling, just going off, talking to Christian and getting a vibe and getting a feel for who he is as a player and a person. I had a feeling going in, him and Venables were really going to hit it off. And sure enough, that just the fact that program is so linebacker focused from Venables down, there's just so many guys that have played linebacker at a high level, know the position at a high level. It's such a key point of their defense. And given where their board's at too, kind of coming out of that weekend, I think Oklahoma is now the biggest threat to Nebraska. They've made a really big impression. He's really intrigued by the opportunity to potentially play in the SEC. Oklahoma moving there, obviously this year. So I'd keep an eye on the Sooners moving forward. I think they kind of replaced Notre Dame as the biggest threat to Nebraska. But this one continues. I just continue to believe this is going to go into the fall. He's already starting to lay out some future visits. He's looking to go to Miami at the end of July, kind of see what they have to offer. I think that's a little out there for him, a little different compared to some of these other programs he's considering. So I'm curious to see what he feels from that. I don't necessarily know if that's a program that he's going to come away with thinking highly of coming out of that weekend, just because I just kind of know the kid and what he's looking for. He's got Wisconsin potentially in the fall. That's a visit he's potentially eyeing. So again, I do think this is going to continue to go in the fall, which I've maintained. I don't think that's the worst thing for Nebraska, because he just wants to see wins from Nebraska. I think that's all he's really waiting to see. And Nebraska starts the season off hot. I think, he still ends up in the class. So I wouldn't be worried about this recruitment if you're a Nebraska fan just yet. I would be wary of Oklahoma right now. I think they're like really in this now, which they weren't even 2-3 weeks ago. But they're really in that now. Auburn as well kind of looms, but that's more so just from the SEC factor of it, his relationship with Durkin more than anything. I don't get a feel that Auburn's a real threat at this very moment. With Hawthorne, on the other hand, I think that's still a bit of a holding pattern, kind of still in that deciding period between, like you said, do I want to stay home, be the hometown hero? Do I want to come try something new in the Big Ten? The fact that I think the staff kind of pitched him on, like you said, like, hey, you're a Big Ten linebacker. Like, you play like a Big Ten linebacker. You have the athleticism to kind of succeed in the modern day as well, but you play with that old school Big Ten mentality. So we like you there. So Nebraska's given their best pitch. I think this is just ultimately going to come down to what he personally feels. Nebraska's never going to push a kid to commit. They're not going to do that here either, but I would expect a decision here in the next couple of days or so.
Where's Iowa in on this? Is Iowa chasing Hawthorne at all?
They are not, and the weird thing is, what I've heard on this, and you watch the film, you're like, "Hey, this is an Iowa
linebacker."
Yeah, this looks like an Iowa. Like this is a mini Jack Campbell. Like you watch that, and you're like, "This is like a Jack was 6'4", 6'5", so I say mini, but Will is 6'1" in his own right. But
give me a Josie Jewell then.
Hey, right, exactly. But Iowa linebacker nonetheless. Actually, what I did hear here was because the kid grew up kind of following Iowa State and was more fond of Iowa State than Iowa kind of just took that personally and just never offered. Which,
wow.
Again, kind of wild. Like again, like that. I wouldn't do that if I was running a program, but I'm not running a program.
So picture this. It's in home. Here comes Captain Kirk in the black and gold. They sit down. There's the old family coffee table, and oops, Mom brought out the lemonade in the Big 12 glasses.
Well, I'm just like imagining Fred Hoiberg sitting down at a recruiting visit and being like, "Oh, you were a Creighton fan whenever you were a kid? Sorry, bud, this ain't gonna work out." Like, I guess it's nice to be in that position if you're Iowa. If that's your strat, it's worked for them. They've found good players, and I don't know. That's interesting. Though. It doesn't strike me as a winning recruiting strategy.
Let's all cue
Not
up.
at all.
Let's all cue up and I took it personally.
Tim, one final thought here is you talked about Christian Jones, his recruitment moving into the fall, likely in your eyes. What weekends are you circling? Colorado seems obvious, but in terms of being big recruiting weekends this fall, June 21st, I'm not sure, was the recruiting weekend that maybe it was thought to be if you go back a month and a half. Are you circling Colorado as the one to follow this year? Are there any other weekends that make sense to you as being big recruiting weekends? I'm
really circling that Colorado one. I think even commits, targets, all of them are like, I want to be in town for that. So I think Colorado weekend is the one that they're kind of, everyone's kind of circling as that big visit weekend for Nebraska. Outside of that, I really think they're trying to get as much of this 2025 class wrapped up as they can this summer. I don't think they will. I think there's still going to be 5 to 10 guys they're going to try and bring in through the fall, or at least try to land in the fall. They're going to bring in probably more than that. But the Colorado ones, I think the big weekend, that first month, I think they're going to take advantage of the home stretch they have. Down the stretch, I think they're going to try and potentially bring some people in for that UCLA game, just because that's a new opponent, a new conference opponent, something new for everyone to kind of experience, and hopefully it won't be too cold by that point in November.
Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska. Follow him at Tim Verghese on Twitter. Rivals.com. Tim, have a great holiday week, and we appreciate you as always, man.
Of course, y'all too.
There he is, Tim Verghese. Good stuff, and great write-up on Jeremiah Jones, and really phenomenal insight.
I love how it's been a weekly tradition at this point where 2 minutes on the other side turns into 8 minutes on the other side.
But he's gracious with him, and he's also doing some great stuff with Damon and Ravi, too. So you get morning or afternoon, but make sure you hear Tim and what he's got to say when it comes to the recruiting world of Big Red football. Good perspective there on Torres, the commit from Hawaii, Jeremiah Jones, and Tapo, the offensive tackle. So good work for the Big Red here. 3 commits the last 3 days. You'll take it if you're a Husker fan. We'll get to more. Your comments in the stream. Always like and subscribe, Hail Varsity YouTube. We'll sneak in a little bit more Matt Rhule and Joel Klatt before we say goodbye in hour 1. Coach McBride, Jay Moore coming up in hour 2. It's Hail Varsity, and we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, it's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Had a chance to talk and golf and lose money to Iowa Russ this weekend on the golf course. Dear friend, and he's got a buddy whose son plays with Hawthorne. And really, they've had a chance to see him up close and personal. Really good linebacker. And I was like, well, Nebraska's trying to get him. And Iowa Russ went to Iowa State undergrad, but he's a Hawkeye fan. He's like, well, good luck with that. Iowa State loves the kid and wants to keep him home. We'll see where things transpire. Let's squeeze in some more from Matt Rhule. We heard a little bit about his excitement for the program and also where Rhule, why he's excited. Let's squeeze in cut 5 here with Rhule to that quiet confidence. Why is he confident about Nebraska in 2024?
I think it's because our staff, we are not afraid of failure. We are not afraid to go 2-10 our first year, 1-11 our first year. Everyone talks about building a culture, and you don't even know what that is sometimes. Well, to me, it's getting the best people possible and setting high standards for how you do things. And if that means that, hey, I'm going to play the guys who will do things right early on, and we might not lose, or because we're trying to recruit freshmen, not take a quick fix, we're willing to go through that. Our bad year here was 5-7 instead of 2-10, which was much better than 2-10. Thank goodness, bro. But I think once the players realize, like, hey, these guys are for real, man. Like, Coach Rhule would rather lose than win by doing things the wrong way. And so we're going to buy into doing things the wrong way. And the staff, like, I've never fired a coach after a first year. Like, we go 1-11, 2-10. Everyone thinks you're going to fire everybody. I'm like, what are you talking about? We did our best work this year. Yeah. And so in those triage years, we are setting the program up quietly to have long-term success. Baylor won a championship after we were gone with those same kids because they had been trained the right way. So I think that building, the first thing you do when you want to build a building is you do what? You got to dig and you got to go down. Yeah. You have to actually go the wrong way to go the right way. And not everyone's willing to do that, especially nowadays with NIL and portal and all that.
So pretty good stuff from Rhule.
I'm pretty sure whenever Rhule got hired, one of the things we said was comparing it to renovating a house. Is sometimes you're going to buy a house and you got to tear out that orange shag carpet that got put in the 1970s, and it feels like you're going the wrong way.
It was great in the 70s. Now it just traps black mold.
And whenever you tear it out, you look at the living room, wow, this looks terrible. Like, we got a long ways to go. But then you get everything fixed and nice and spick and span, and you go, okay.
That's good.
You got to go backwards before you go forward.
Right. Dig down before you build up. Reminder to get buckled up. Driving is a full-time job. Phones, food, and friends need your attention when you're not driving. Stop the distractions. Just drive. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. We'll have some more comments. We'll sneak in from Matt Rhule either a little bit later in today's show or part of tomorrow as Rhule gets into the turnover topic, and you don't want to miss what he has to say about the offense and not just Raiola, but the quarterback room specifically. So that is to stay tuned for. Mr. Blackshirt is on deck. We'll say hi to Charlie McBride, a Monday with Charlie, and get his thoughts on 4th of July, if it's true or not, if he does make his own fireworks / dynamite. Jay Moore also joins us. Hour 2 coming up. Hail Varsity with you on a Monday, and we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
This is Christian Peter. I'm sorry, but the stories I have about Charlie are not appropriate for the public.
The right case of the Mondays. It's Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, on Hail Varsity Radio.
Have you back. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and we welcome in Mr. Blackshirt. It's a Monday with Charlie. And I tell you, one of the spots to be is probably up at old Coach McBride's Lake for that 4th of July celebration. Coach, you gearing up? How you doing today?
Good. We're going to blow the whole joint up.
I thought so.
It's really a nice deal here. They really do a good job. And, everybody in the lake, you figure 400 homes here, and everybody donates a bunch of money. And the one year it was 45 minutes long. Everybody went to sleep about 3/4 of the way, halfway through the thing. And but it's really good because people go out in their boat and they do it right on the lake. I mean, they set up a stand on one side of the lake, but it's in the water, and then people can go out in their boats or sit on their docks or do anything they want. It's really a good, nice time for everybody.
That sounds like a ton of fun. And Elijah and I were talking. Did you ever, we're kind of joking with this question, but maybe not. Did you ever make your own fireworks?
No, but there's a guy that from Sturgis, who's a real good friend of people. Some of the people around here. He went to, he grew up here, and everybody knew him. He was in the military, and he was a guy that was a demolition guy, kind of.
Oh.
He was a demolition guy, and he came here and he had pipe bombs. Okay, that sounds like you don't want any of them around here. And he made them with paper, out of paper and stuff. and somehow he made it. But the first one he blew off was about an 8-foot wide hole in my beach. And I said he blew all the sand next door, But the second one went off. I think that was the one where, the little red light was going. And I mean, loud is not the word for it. There wasn't anything that loud. I mean, in my life I've heard. But he didn't do it next year.
We had a guy from Sturgis that could make pipe bombs.
I think everyone wants to know a guy from Sturgis that can make pipe bombs.
Not just in August either, right? So
I'm not naming any names.
No, we're not asking. Charlie McBride's with us.
I think everyone. I have one guy in my life I know that has some stuff that he makes on this. I think everyone needs to know that guy. Maybe not be too close with that guy, but have him somewhere deep in your contact list.
If he ever has a cabin in the woods and he just drops off the grid, maybe just forgets you know him.
Delete the contact.
Maybe.
Don't bring that stuff up. I don't want to answer any questions with the FBI in it.
And the FBI comes knocking.
Yeah, well, that's where you get blamed for anything that isn't yours anyway.
Yeah, they're just going to play this interview and you're like, that does not look good on paper, I tell you what.
No, it was all in fun. Charlie McBride's with us, Coach. So today it's officially welcome Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC. It's officially welcome Washington and Oregon and USC and UCLA to the Big Ten. I want to go back to when the Big 12 formed, that last year, the Big 8 in 95, and then voila, snap our fingers, and here's the Big 12. If Charlie McBride could have either added anybody to the Big 12 or subtracted somebody, if it was up to you, how would you have had the Big 12 look back then?
Well, I think that Texas and Oklahoma was a good deal. Mm-hmm. The problem was that Oklahoma, in reality, talking to a lot of the high school coaches who talked to a lot of their coaches at Oklahoma, was it's really tough getting two big-time games, Texas versus Oklahoma and Nebraska at the end of the year and everything. That's a little hard sometimes on some of the players in ways that you don't know. It's just because it continues all year with pressure. You got to do this, and they don't talk about the games you're playing.
Right.
That was one thing, but I think the conference was. I think it was really good. I mean, it was local. It was where people could get at it. It had. I would say this: if it had kept going, it had probably been A&M and Arkansas would have been the next two. Mm-hmm. That if any joined, there was always talk about Arkansas, and we never thought that Missouri would leave, but Arkansas was if you look at the map, mm-hmm. they were primed for being here. I mean, they were. They were right in the middle of the Big 8 and the Big 12, and so. But I would say that it would have been a really tough conference. Nowadays, it's so much involved around money that you can't even fathom what's going on behind closed doors.
You guys had always recruited Texas real well. And then you get a chance to play in Texas twice a year, or for sure you're playing a Texas team twice a year back in the old Big 12. But do you feel pretty good about where Nebraska's at now when it comes to recruiting Texas just because of Matt Rhule's ties down there?
I absolutely do. You can go down there and get all these 4 or 5-star kids, and you can go ahead and go down to Texas Tech or Baylor or some of these, and you'll hear names that people don't even know, mm-hmm. and they can fly and they can catch and they can run and there's so many kids that develop late, and I mean that's crazy. We looked at kids as walk-ons, especially linemen, who were 225 pounds and in the tweeners, and a 250-pound guy or 275-pound guy was really a big guy then. Now it's a whole different world, but when you go back in the spring, or and all of a sudden you see this kid that you really liked. He put on 50 pounds or 20 pounds, and, he's a whole different kid. And he's won the state, and in the shot put and the discus, or he did some things that are, what do you do then? I remember Tom saying to a kid, if you come to school now and pay your own way for a year, we'll scholarship you next semester and put you on next year's numbers. And, those are kind of things that we did when you found somebody like that. And then, you really tried hard to encourage them. And I felt bad because for when I first came here, we're cutting UNO's throat, we're cutting South Dakota's throat. And, all of Dakota schools and, the bigger group that were after us because kids would get scholarships there. And Nebraska financially was the place that it was not out of sight. Had it been something like Stanford or something like that, they never would have changed. But financially, it was worth to give them a try. A lot of kids walked on because they wanted to graduate from Nebraska, and they were in agriculture, and they wanted to do that. And there were a lot of different reasons, but that was one of the big ones is kids really want to go to school here. So some of them who were on the borderline said, I want to go to school there. I got a scholarship to so-and-so, but, I want to get my degree from Nebraska. And so they ended up, coming, and some didn't make it. But if you drive down the road and go to Palmyra and all these little towns around there, you don't have, there's nobody there, right? How many guys were All-Americans, first-round draft choices, and that from those towns? Two or three guys.
Steinkühler comes to mind.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure. And then Uyghur, you look at him, he was from Wahoo. Okay, oh, good. I mean, it was like, but something? I saw him play one time, and I said, you know what? He's going to be in the NFL. And I forget who I was with. I'm a dumbbell. But I did the same thing in Arizona, and Billy Callahan took the guy, and he ended up playing in the end. I even remember his name, but great big kid, played offensive tackle. And, it was Prince was one of the other kids. I had six. I think I recommended six, and 5 of them played, and one kid had a bad shoulder and couldn't play. But, those days were, that's how we got kids. And, John Reinhardt and I, who John played for us, he was a walk-on kid from Denver. Brother played at Colorado, and he and I went out on Friday night and went to maybe 2 games, and I saw this kid come out. He ran on the field and got in the stance. I said he's going to play in the NFL. I mean, he's a straight-A student, and a center on the basketball team. And, that's the way you find kids, nowadays. And so that's why I think when you talk about Texas, I love it. They're well coached, and I know kids. I know some Texas coaches. I know some Oklahoma coaches, and they coach the living heck out of them. And those kids are so dedicated to the game and their education that it's a whole different can of worms than you get a kid from, some other places in the country.
It's Charlie McBride with us here. And Charlie, I think that entire last answer just kind of underscored the importance at a place like Nebraska of being able to cast a wide net, being able to get kids from Texas and Oklahoma, the same that you're finding kids that are close to home and maybe a little under-recruited. And with potential roster caps being discussed by the leaders of college football, whether that be 85 players or 120 players, just a hard roster limit, how do you think that would have changed how you guys would have had to operate back in the day?
Well, here's the deal with me. If they did that, okay, I'm old enough where I get 3 meals a day, I get my health care paid for, and I sit in prison and I blow their brains out.
Wow.
I mean, I'm not kidding you. That's like taking stuff away from. Why would you want to take things away from young people when we need them now? I mean, I don't understand some of these guys. I guess it's a dollar bill. Is that what it is?
It's non-college football people making decisions for college football.
Sure, it's a bunch of guys just like the president took over when SMU was robbing the world, and a lot of the other. We're not going to have this ever happen again. They start making the rules, and they ruined the NCAA. We had rules that they made that were broken so many times that it made it worse.
Yeah.
And they, and I respect the presidents for being academic and what they stand for. But I'll tell you, if you think you're a football coach and you know how to rule that kind of stuff, you don't. And that turns into a real mess, and it did. And that's the thing that started it off, I think, is we started getting people that we take away the athletic director. We're hiring a businessman. Okay, hire a businessman that played football. I don't care what you do, but somebody that had some contact, with athletics. And I mean, that's like saying I'm going to go work in the steel mills, and I never worked in the steel mills in my life. I ran a sewing machine,
yeah,
but I don't know how. Well, we need you over here because you know this. Oh, please, come on.
Charlie,
Go ahead.
No, I get it. We're kind of all on the same page and you don't put a cap on kids and education and football and sports, and you just hope it doesn't. You hope it doesn't go that way.
Let me tell you a trick real fast. I went to a school in the Big Ten. I mean, we went and played there one time. Mm-hmm. Went to school, and that school, I went out, and there were five black Cadillacs. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Those 5 Cadillacs were given to seniors that were very good players at that school. They all had lease agreements at their house. And if anything came up where they were questioned on it, they signed a lease agreement, took it to the dealer, and they were leasing the car, and that's legal. Mm. But they really, you can figure out the end of the parts of it, but that's kind of the kind of stuff that went on. And now, when I hear Harbaugh say at the end of his time that what we did when this thing came up about this NIL, we gave every kid a check for $20,000. Well, what about the kid we lost? How would it be if they walked in the house and we lost a linebacker to Michigan? The next day, we lost a quarterback to Oregon State. The next day, you go back and look at that. And so how did that happen? Well, you never know. You think somebody tampered with him?
Likely, absolutely.
You don't even have a rule for that.
No. Coach, we'll run you down next week. Enjoy your 4th. This was a lot of fun today. Thank you so much. Okay, guys. Hey, listen, have a great week. You too, Coach.
You as well, Charlie.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Stay nice.
I'm trying to keep all 10 digits, Charlie.
Two beers that's it. You're done.
I know. That's what the wife says. Take care, Coach.
Have fun, guys. Okay, thanks for having me.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in Jay Moore, co-host Big Red Wrap-Up, Blackshirt Husker NFLer. As Jaybird, we are not going to ask to look in your basement or trunk for maybe non-permissible fireworks. Are you a lake guy, a neighborhood guy, or golf and let the rest of the day figure it out?
Yeah, I'm a little bit of everything. We've already have gone to some fireworks stands outside of city limits, obviously, because Lincoln is, I think it's only, what 24 hours before the 4th they start selling. So, but still adhering to local rules. When and how to light off stuff yet, but my son is just obsessed with fireworks right now. I mean, he is like the ads that come in the mail, he's looking at them, and he just thinks we should spend thousands of dollars on fireworks. And I'm just like, hey, you know what? When I was your age, I thought the same thing. But now we're literally lighting money on fire when we do this, so we got to be a little smart about it. No, I'll be playing some golf. I'm always playing a little firecracker deal, and then I don't know, pool. We've done pool, we've done lakes, we kind of done everything, but kind of got to feel how the weather's going to be. Might be a tad bit stormy, rainy on the 4th, but that clears up. We'll be by some water somewhere, and then we'll be doing fireworks at our house. Usually watch the country club fireworks show. I think that's Thursday night as well. So plenty of options, but a lot of family will be around, some good food, some cold beverages, and a lot of good times.
I may bump into you Thursday like I did last year, and just know it's not me. It's my wife putting all those drinks on the Moore family tab.
That's fine. There's a couple Moores, so hopefully they go on the other one.
Well, which Moore is it, sir? The big guy.
The one with a lower handicap than Joe and Trump.
Yeah. Jay Moore is with us.
And Jay, are you the type of guy who's going to go sit the family down the morning of the 3rd and say, this is our limit for fireworks this year, and then you inevitably show up at the stand and it ends up being like double that? Because that was my dad. Every single year he said, this is our monetary amount. Elijah, you have this much. Ben, you have this much. We're not going over it. And then we show up to the stand and we're like, Dad, that's $400 worth of fireworks in your cart. What are you talking about here? Yeah,
you can get emotions can get the best of you when you go to the fireworks stand, that's for sure. But you got to keep a sound mind, right? Because otherwise, you can get out of control real quick. We kind of just go bits and pieces. Obviously, grandpa and grandparents get involved as well, so that who knows where that one goes. But golly, yeah, it's tough. I love nothing better than watching the kids get excited, but you just think, it's like, man, I'm legitimately just lighting money on fire right now, and it's a hard pill to swallow, but I get it. The emotions and everything of it is they're fun. I was the same way as a kid, but we are fortunate enough as growing up. My dad had some friends that had fireworks stands. We kind of would go there and get it more at cost. So we would come home, we would rake, and it happened a couple years. So that was a lot of fun, and obviously it was very unrealistic as well. I need to find some more connections like that around town so we could, so my son can enjoy the same thing.
A 4th of July tip from one Elijah Herbel. If you overbuy on the 4th of July, you sit there, like you're on the night of the 4th and you go, we can't light all this stuff off, and it stops becoming as fun, because you just have to get through it. A piece of advice I have, not many people know this, fireworks also legal for just under an hour on New Year's Eve into New Year's Day at midnight. You can make your neighbors hate you, but it feels a lot more special whenever no one else has fireworks and you've saved some from the 4th. You're sending up artillery shells, the neighbors hate you. It is a strategy that can help you if you are one of those people like me that tends to overbuy on the 4th of July. Set some aside and say, that's my New Year's stash.
Hey, it's checkers. checkers versus chess right there, my man.
Or
right?
It could be your stash for whenever Nebraska makes a bowl game, huh?
Sure.
Huh?
Sure.
Light some fireworks off?
Yeah.
The topic of urgency you kind of led into.
Kind of.
we've got a stash. We gotta fire up. But pretty good stuff today, Jay Bird, from Matt Rhule with Joel Klatt, and the topic of Dylan Raiola came up. Not shocking, but Rhule's answer, and we heard a little bit of it in hour one, was not saying here's our starter, not putting too much praise / pressure on the kid, but he was very accurate in saying you get a talent like that, it's going to raise the level of play. I want to get into that with you here. There's urgency from Rhule. There's urgency from the fan base, former players. They like what they hear and they like what they see, and they'll really like what they see with the turnover differential flipping the other way. What do you believe can be consistent for this offense with that level of play being raised up?
Yeah, I think it's a fine line, and it's tough because obviously you have a talent that's coming in, a generational talent that has all the bells and whistles, has ability to make throws that a quarterback hasn't been able to make for a while here. But I also don't want them to put them in a tough position just because he can make those throws, and they have to still be able to commit to running the football. They have to do that, and that's going to benefit a true freshman quarterback. I don't care how much hype, how much talent, whatever it is, they still have to commit to doing that. And they can still do that and be successful at that. They're going to make his life a whole hell of a lot easier. I just hope that expectations are that they want to come out and chuck it 30 plus times a game. Now, maybe if they get down early against someone, they might have to. But to me, they have to come out and still establish it. You have to get downhill. You have to utilize play action. You have to utilize the great tight ends you have on this roster. And then you have to make Dylan set him up for success, and that's the easier throws. That is a second and fourth attempt, right, on a pass play where the defense kind of like, you could run it or throw it, whatever it is, and really set him up for success by giving him, some easier options, some simple stuff. And then you obviously, as the year progresses, you've got to change it up because, defenses are becoming more privy to what you're kind of doing offensively. But I think early on is really establishing the run, shortening the game. I think that's going to help him as well. Let your defense, who's going to be really good, set you up for success as well. Flip the field, get you in some nice, you're seeing the ball at your own 30, 40, maybe 50-yard line, relying on your strengths within your team, and then saying, okay, Dylan, we've got this game plan set up for you. We're not going to ask you to do too much. If you have to, if you need to, you got to kind of create and make some throws. I hope it doesn't come to that, but hey, go do your thing. But committing to running the football, setting him up for success with easy throws, easy plays, and just kind of let everything else kind of fall around you. And then maybe you can get a little more complicated as the year goes on. But I think for me, now I'm not Satterfield by any means, you got to run the football to help a true freshman quarterback out.
Jay, from your perspective as a defensive lineman, the multiple different types of offenses, they all have their own pros and cons. What do you think as a defensive lineman the pros are of a balanced offense when it specifically relates to the trenches, offensive line and defensive line? Because you think about some of those quick passing attacks can get really frustrating for defensive linemen because you don't have a chance to pin your ears back and get after the quarterback because the ball's out in, a second and a half. You have some of those power run offenses that get frustrating for a defense because it just body blows all game long. And you really don't get to rush the passer because it's 3 yards in a cloud of dust. What do you think the frustration is with the balanced offense, aside from the obvious of just, on second and medium, you don't quite know what's coming?
Yeah, it's all of that. As a defensive lineman, you kind of have to feel the game out early on. You have to trust what you see on film, but you also have to kind of get yourself to trust it early on in the game to see what the sets look like, spacing, gaps, all these type of things. If it all matches up to what you see on film. But a team that is, likes to run the football, the play action game is tough. You got to be able to kind of feel that and recognize when it is a run versus a pass. And if the offensive linemen kind of give it away early on, some of them will, some of them won't. But the quick game stuff, very, very frustrating for defensive linemen, but a good opportunity to kind of get yourself out there and make some plays. Good opportunity to get yourself running around, but also in play action, things kind of move a little slowly. So if you can read and recognize early and get off, especially if they keep a tight end on the defensive end, or either 1-1 block with a tackle, if you recognize that early, you can shed the tackle or tight end. You're going to have an opportunity to get there, because it's probably usually a 3 to 5 step drop in that situation, and it's a longer developing route concept, so there is some time. So it's a bit of a mix. You just got to kind of feel in your way. You can't get frustrated. It's a long game. It's a long process, and you just got to go out there and play and take every snap as individual and see and just do what you're supposed to do within the defense. And when the time comes and the opportunity it presents itself, you go make a play. But that's just part of it. That's just the position you play. You get frustrated sometimes, but you can't let it overwhelm you, and you just do what you got to do to play well within the defense.
Jay Moore's with us, few minutes. Hail Varsity Radio at JMoore44. Follow him on Twitter. Catch him with Big Red Wrap Up, Blackshirt Husker NFL, or our Blackshirt Hour. Jay, we were talking about this on the Average Joe Sports Show podcast, and one of the question marks of the football team we touched on, all right, what's the running back room going to be, the secondary, right? But, we were also going around the horn on offensive tackle. We think Ben Hart's fine and ready for his best football, ton of experience. Are you concerned about the left tackle spot just with Teddy's history? And Teddy's a good ball player, but you just want to see him settle and have an injury-free rest of his career. Is that left tackle spot not knowing, or the uncertainty behind really both tackle spots? I know Corcoran's still a name that's played some football as well, but it's some younger guys that haven't been in the program as long behind those guys that have are penciled in at starter.
Yeah, those are the first three guys when you mentioned it. It was obviously Ben Hart, Corcoran, and then Teddy Prohaska. And listen, I think Teddy was well on the way having a great first couple of years, but obviously the injury bugs between the knee and his shoulder have gotten him. So I think he's still trying to work his way through that. The God-given, talents and abilities he has, it's just getting himself to a point where he's strong enough and he just can get all these injuries. And finding, I think, the body type, because I think some guys, bigger guys, they can add you can put too much weight on them and to where they become a little more injury prone. So just kind of feeling that way out as well with him. I think Ben Hart's played well last year, gotten better. He was rather inconsistent early on, but and then Corcoran is again just dealing with injuries. So I think there's plenty of options. I think there's plenty of guys behind them, younger guys that have the ability to protect and help a guy like Dylan Raiola get comfortable back there as a young player. So it just all comes down to understanding your strengths and weaknesses and knowing you got to be able to run the football, and that comes down to the offensive line. You can have whatever running backs. It could be Gabe Irvin, it could be Emmett Johnson, it could be Ramir, whoever it is back there. But those offensive linemen got to get it done. And there are some guys that got called up as young players. Justin Evans, Jackson. I can't remember that.
You got it first time, Justin Evans Jenkins.
Yeah, Jenkins, yeah. He got called up early as a guard and played well. So I think the offensive line is again, I feel really good about where it is because so many guys you got 6-year guys, right? This is the era of college football we live in where you have 6-year seniors, but everything's kind of progressing in the right way where that's the strength of the offense. That's what you want. Defensively, your best players are on the defensive line. Offensively, I wouldn't say maybe the best, but the most experienced players are on the offensive line, where I think that's something that's going to benefit this team. But injuries are going to happen. You're never going to be healthy playing offensive line. You're always going to be banged up. You're going to have an ankle, a foot, a wrist, a finger, a shoulder, a neck. Something's going to be banged up. But you hopefully enough to where some of these guys who've had injuries in the past can work through them. And some of these younger guys, if they do have to miss a couple games, can step up and replace them. But I love the way they work and practice. Coach Rhule does a fantastic job with them. So I mean, the depth is there. The depth is there at this offensive line. It's just kind of figuring out who's going to take advantage of the opportunities and who can stay healthy, and finding those 5 guys that work really well together, because they all got to work in unison. They got to communicate well. So it's not a perfect science at all, but I think it's working in the right way for the offense finally.
Jay, with how Matt Rhule likes to practice, how Matt Rhule likes to play, what is your concern for injuries in 2024? You know they're going to happen. Last year, I would say it rose to the level where I'd call it a litany of injuries at the end of last season. Offensive line, a couple spots in the defense, especially the running back room. Do you worry about that in 2024 just because of the way Matt Rhule practices, or do you believe that there's something to, if you practice physically all year long, guys' bodies will get used to that and it won't be as big of an issue once you get into year 2, once you get into year 3?
Yeah, I think injuries just happen. It's kind of, they can be fluky. I think you got to practice physical. You have to. You can't be too worried about injuries. You can't baby them. You got to practice them hard. I mean, we practice hard now. I was in college. I never missed a game. So that's just part of it. Now, maybe in the later year, you back off a little bit, but you have to be physical. You have to go good on good, and the kind of way he does it with, I think, earlier practices on Monday and Tuesday, and then the heavier practice of the week's Wednesday night. Kind of gives them a little more rest, and then Thursdays is a more of a walkthrough, and Friday's a quicker practice as well. So I'm not too concerned. I don't think you can ever be worried about it. When injuries come, you just got to take them in stride, and maybe you make some tweaks, maybe you make some adjustments. That's also why you develop depth, and that's also why you reorganize practice, and to make sure that you have 3 separate groups going at once. So guys are getting reps. Guys aren't standing around. Guys are practicing. Guys are getting 60 to 80 reps every day in practice and team. So that's important. So I think they're addressing that, like I said, but you can never be too concerned about injury. Yeah, it was the wide receiver injuries and the running back injuries and some of the O-line injuries, and those are just going to happen, unfortunately. Some probably more soft tissue stuff that happens, but overall, you gotta get your kids ready to play, and you gotta be physical. It's the Big Ten. You gotta be physical. It's a grind out there, and it's not like it's the NFL or anything like that. So I have no problem with being physical in practice, and you just can't be too concerned with the overall injury outlook.
Jay, we'll end it with this. Texas and Oklahoma, it's officially welcome to the SEC Day. Is Texas and OU ready for the SEC, or do you believe that maybe, is the SEC ready for Texas and Oklahoma?
Yeah, it's kind of it's gonna be fun. They fit, it was fun having them in the Big 12, or why we're in the Big 12, I should say, because they've always been in the Big 12 for the most part. But it's just time to change it. College football's changing. The conference realignment is going to be happening every year. The discussions always going to be coming up about potential changes. Obviously, this for TV revenue and so on in college football playoff scenarios. But they're going to fit in well. I think Texas fits in well there. You already saw Texas go on the road last year and beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Oklahoma, I think goes to Alabama this year. So it's going to be fun to see. I think they're going to handle their own. I really do. I think Venerables at OU is getting things back to where it was under Coach Riley, playing better defense. The offensive, the system of the offense will get going. So, no, I don't have too many concerns. I think it's gonna be fun to see them. It's just weird, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Big 8 to Big 12 to now the SEC, and it's just the game of college football is going to be changing soon. I mean, Florida State could be in a different conference, and who knows? A lot of the ACC schools could be spread apart and picked apart. So I think going forward, we'll have probably this conversation a few dozen times, just with all the realignment. But it's the day and age we live in now.
Jay, quickly with all the realignment, I think some of these marquee non-conference matchups that we've gotten early in the season are likely to go away. If there's one team in the country that you could schedule one non-conference game with for Nebraska in the next couple of seasons, who would it be?
Oh, boy. And there's some good ones.
I mean, you've seen Colorado and Oklahoma in recent years. Do you just go for the trifecta and get another shot at Texas?
It'd be good to play Texas again. After going to Alabama's game last year in Tuscaloosa, I'd love us to play Alabama. Hell with it.
Jay wants Bama. Jay wants Bama.
Jay's the first and last in the state of Nebraska in 2024 to say we want Bama.
That's going back to Tuscaloosa to watch that football game because that was an absolute blast. So that's why I'm selfish in that one. Whether it's a win or loss, I want the atmosphere because that atmosphere is one of the best.
All right, we will.
We'll make some calls. We'll see what we can do.
Friend Garth Glissman down in the SEC offices and see if not only can Nebraska get a home and home with Bama, but get us about 5 sideline passes. All right.
Here we go in a little Dixieland delight. Start of the fourth quarter.
Jay Moore is with us. Jay, enjoy your fourth, bud. We'll talk again.
Thanks, guys. You too.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity Radio. Big thanks to Charlie McBride and Jay Moore for joining us. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, Hail Varsity YouTube channel, and give us a follow on the radio Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. Chris Schmidt to Elijah Herbel at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah. Different platforms can take care of you, too. Watching or catching up with the show, AM 590, Omaha's ESPN, KFOR, Lincoln, Facebook, and Twitter. Central Nebraska Superstation, ESPN, 1460 and 1550 in Kearney, Hastings, Grand Island, Tri-City region, and then News Talk 900 in Columbus. Without further ado, Dylan Raiola, Joel Klatt, and Matt Rhule. The topic of Dylan and elevating that Big Red offense.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan's talent is only matched by who he is as a person. You know, I mean, his family. You know, obviously, you know, his father was a great Husker. Father played, 14 years in the NFL as an offensive lineman, the most unselfish position that there is, and as a center, a great mom, great sister, great younger brothers. His uncle's our offensive line coach, and so the great thing for us was in recruiting. That he came because he knew what the program was really like on the inside. Yeah. That sends a message to everybody else in recruiting that, hey, this is a good place. Like, I was going to go somewhere else. I know what's happening here. You should trust it. You should come here. Yeah. I think the second part of it is, so now you're attracting players from all across the country that want to come play with him. But at the end of the day, to your point, it comes down to the football. And, he has a unique feel for the game. He's really, really smart. You always hear Tom Brady and those guys talk about when your best players work the hardest, you have a great team. Yeah. Well, Dylan's one of those guys who tries to work the hardest. And so people talk a lot about turnovers last year, which we should. I'd go back and say if we can throw the ball better, if we can complete 3rd and 5, if we can, if we're not throwing, interceptions, if we can be more aggressive because we trust our decision making. And so that's been one of the challenges for Dylan. That's been one of the challenges for Danny and for Heinrich. Everyone wants to know who the starting quarterback's going to be in Nebraska. I'm always like, hey, it's going to take probably 2, maybe 3 in this 17-game seasons that we want to have. And so he certainly has helped us raise the level of play, and I think he's going to be a guy that all of college football knows.
Good answer on Dylan and making sure that, all the quarterbacks are mentioned. Steven follows up with Jay's comments about we want Bama. And, 77-78, I think my brother-in-law, Uncle Andy's uncle ripped Bear Bryant's houndtooth hat off of his head.
Really?
Somebody. He was close to that side of the family, which was good.
I think that's technically assault, isn't it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Bear probably flicked his Chesterfield at him. Tiger Shark Diver says, I drink more Evian than the French. This is the same Evian battle I've had since I bought it. So I just fill up from the water.
Wait, let's dive into this. When did you buy it? Has it ever been washed?
Oh, no.
When did you buy it?
I don't know, a couple months ago, 3 months ago. It's fine.
Never washed it.
No, it's water. Wash it when I refill it.
Okay.
Are you grossed out now?
I mean, I'm a mid-20s bachelor. Like, I probably don't live the most sanitary lifestyle either, but
no,
that's a step too far. I wash out my coffee. Like it's not like you wash out your coffee mug, right?
Sure.
Thank you.
Eventually.
So you don't wash out that though?
Well, I mean,
it's not the same concept?
I just fill it up and put it back in the fridge, bro. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Tell us what you think, good, bad, or ugly. To leave the review. Like and subscribe to the Hail Varsity Radio podcast, Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Back tomorrow at 4. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you tomorrow.